My name is Emma, and if someone had told me 5 years ago that the person who would destroy my marriage would be my own sister, I would have laughed in their face. Olivia wasn't just my sister. She was my childhood, my best friend, and the one person I believed would always protect me. We grew up sharing the same bedroom, the same dreams, and the same promise that no matter what happened, we would always stand by each other. Looking back now, I realized that some promises are only meant to be broken. At the time, I believed I had a perfect life. My husband Daniel wasn't wealthy or famous, but he made me feel safe. We had been married for 4 years, living in a small but cozy house just outside the city. Every evening we would cook dinner together, laugh about our day, and talk about the future. We dreamed of having children, buying a larger home, and growing old together. I truly believed I had found the kind of happiness people spend their entire lives searching for. Olivia visited us almost every weekend. She had always been close to both of us, and I never thought twice about it. She would bring homemade desserts, help me clean the kitchen, and joke around with Daniel while I made coffee. Watching them laugh together made me happy because I believed my husband and my sister genuinely cared about each other as family. Then, little things started changing. Daniel began smiling at his phone more often. Whenever I walked into the room, he would quickly lock the screen and place it face down on the table. If I asked who had messaged him, he would casually reply, "Just work," before changing the subject. I wanted to believe him because trust had always been the foundation of our marriage. A few days later, I noticed Olivia wearing a bracelet that looked strangely familiar. My heart skipped for a second when I realized it was exactly like the one Daniel had bought a month earlier. When I asked where she got it, she smiled without hesitation and said she had found it on sale online. Her answer sounded believable, but something deep inside me refused to stay quiet. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, why would my own sister ever betray me? Why would the man who promised to love me forever throw everything away? One rainy Thursday afternoon, my office meeting was cancelled unexpectedly. I decided to surprise Daniel by coming home early. On the way back, I even stopped to buy his favorite chocolate cake because I thought we could spend the evening together. I remember smiling as I unlocked the front door, completely unaware that my life was about to change forever. The house was unusually quiet. As I stepped inside, I heard soft laughter coming from the living room. It wasn't loud enough to understand the words, but it sounded comfortable, familiar, intimate. I slowly walked toward the sound. Then I stopped. Daniel and Olivia were sitting closer than they ever should have been. They didn't notice me at first. Olivia gently touched his hand while they looked at something on his phone. Daniel smiled at her in a way I hadn't seen him smile at me for months. My heart began pounding so hard that I could hear it in my ears. Just as I took another step, the wooden floor creaked beneath my feet. Both of them looked up. Their smiles disappeared instantly. Olivia quickly moved her hand away. Daniel stood up so fast that his phone slipped from the couch onto the floor. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The silence felt heavier than any words ever could. Olivia forced a nervous smile and said, "Emma, you're home early." I smiled back, pretending everything was normal. But deep inside, something had already broken. And although I didn't know it yet, that moment was only the beginning of the greatest betrayal of my life. I stood there for a few seconds, looking at both of them, trying to understand why the room suddenly felt so different. A moment earlier, I had been thinking about cake, dinner, and spending a quiet evening with my husband. Now I was standing in my own living room, staring at two people I trusted more than anyone else. Daniel bent down and picked up his phone. "You scared me," he said with a nervous laugh. I looked at Olivia. She was avoiding my eyes. "Why are you here?" I asked her. Olivia immediately answered, "I just came to see you." I glanced at the clock. It was almost 6 in the evening. "See me?" I asked. "I'm usually not home until 7. She hesitated. Then she smiled and said, "I thought maybe I could wait for you." It was a simple answer, but something about it didn't feel right. I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't look at me. That bothered me more than anything else. I placed the cake on the kitchen counter and forced myself to smile. "Well, I'm home now." Neither of them responded. I walked into the kitchen and started making coffee, pretending I wasn't paying attention to the silence behind me. A few minutes later, Olivia came into the kitchen. She stood beside me and began talking about completely ordinary things. She told me about her work, complained about traffic, and mentioned that she was thinking about changing apartments. I listened quietly. Then she touched my shoulder. "Emma, are you okay?" I turned toward her. Why wouldn't I be? She smiled. "I don't know. You just seem quiet." I almost laughed. Quiet? I wanted to ask her why she had been holding my husband's hand. Instead, I said, "I'm just tired." She nodded. A few minutes later, she left. I watched her walk to her car through the window. Daniel stood behind me. "Why are you acting strange?" he asked. I turned around. "Am I?" "Yes." I looked directly into his eyes. "Are you hiding something from me?" His expression changed for just a second. Then he laughed. "Emma, what are you talking about?" "I don't know," I said. "That's why I'm asking." He walked toward me and gently touched my shoulder. "You're imagining things." Those 3 words stayed in my mind all night. You're imagining things. Maybe I was. Maybe I had simply become suspicious for no reason. Maybe my husband and my sister really were innocent. So I decided to forget about it. At least I tried. But the next morning, I woke up before Daniel. His phone was lying on the nightstand. Normally, I never touched it. I respected his privacy. But just as I got out of bed, the screen lit up. One message appeared. "Last night was amazing. I wish you hadn't left so early." There was no name visible. Only a phone number. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. "Don't worry. She still doesn't know." My hands began shaking. I picked up the phone. For the first time in 4 years of marriage, I felt like I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. I knew I shouldn't look. But I also knew that something was wrong. I opened the messages. There were dozens of them. Some were harmless. Others weren't. They talked about meeting secretly. They talked about missing each other. And then I saw a message that made my entire body go cold. "I can't keep pretending she's your wife forever." I stopped breathing. I read it again. Then again. My eyes filled with tears. I didn't need a name. I already knew who had written it. Olivia. My own sister. The woman who had hugged me at my wedding. The woman who had cried beside me when our grandmother died. The woman I had defended my entire life. she was having an affair with my husband. I put the phone back exactly where it had been. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and covered my mouth with both hands so Daniel wouldn't hear me crying. 1,000 memories suddenly made sense. The late-night messages, the secret smiles, the unexpected visits, the bracelet, the way they stopped talking whenever I entered the room. It had all been happening right in front of me, and I had been too trusting to see it. Daniel woke up about 20 minutes later. He looked at me and smiled. "Good morning." I looked at the man I loved. For the first time, his face didn't feel familiar. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to throw his phone across the room. I wanted to call Olivia and ask her how she could do this to me. But instead, I said quietly, "Good morning." Daniel kissed my forehead. I almost pulled away. Almost. But I didn't. Because before I confronted them, I needed to know how deep the betrayal went. I needed the truth. And what I discovered over the next few days was far worse than anything I had imagined. Daniel started coming home later and later. He said work was becoming stressful. Olivia suddenly had reasons to visit our neighborhood. One evening, Daniel told me he had to attend an important business dinner. I smiled and said I understood. But instead of staying home, I followed him. I kept my distance as his car drove across town. Eventually, he stopped outside a small restaurant. I watched him get out. Then another car pulled up. My heart sank. Olivia stepped out. She looked around before walking toward him. Daniel opened his arms. She hugged him. Not like a sister-in-law. Not like family. Like a woman greeting the man she loved. I sat inside my car, frozen. I had my proof. But somehow having proof hurt more than suspicion. I watched them disappear into the restaurant together. That night I didn't cry. I simply drove home. I sat in the dark living room for almost an hour, staring at the wedding photograph on the wall. In that picture, Daniel was smiling. I was smiling. Olivia was standing beside me, holding my bouquet. Everyone looked happy. Everyone looked innocent. But 5 years later, I would look back at that photograph and realize something I hadn't understood that night. Sometimes the people standing closest to you aren't there because they love you. Sometimes they're standing close because they're waiting for the right moment to take what belongs to you. The next morning, Daniel came home just before sunrise. He thought I was asleep. I heard the front door open. Then I heard his footsteps. He entered the bedroom quietly. I kept my eyes closed. He placed his keys on the table. Then his phone vibrated. He picked it up. I heard him whisper, "Don't worry. I'll handle her." My heart started pounding again. But this time, I wasn't going to remain silent. Because I had just realized something much more frightening than the fact that my husband was cheating on me. They weren't simply having an affair. They were planning something. And whatever they were planning, I was the person standing in their way.